This meeting is being recorded.
Whoa. Well, great. Thank you so much, Veronica. It's been my pleasure to MC this meeting for the past month and a couple weeks. Great to be a part of it. Next month, Joel is excited about doing it. And tonight it is, it's a real privilege to introduce somebody that I admire so much. It's actually interesting. I heard Mildred several years ago and heard several of her stories and several of her talks. And then, years and years and years had passed. And I was thinking, man, how do I find out? I'd forgotten her name. And I was like, how do I find out? How do I find this person? It'd be really cool if I could find that person in my head. So I started kind of searching for a couple of people. And I knew a guy who had hosted her, but I couldn't get his number. And then I asked Dawn, we had a big speaker meeting a week or two prior to that. And I asked Dawn, and she goes, I'm running out of certain speakers. Can you help me get some stuff? And she brought Mildred's name right up. And I was like, oh, that's her, the lady from Canada. She used to be in, oh yeah, it was. And she said it the exact same day, like right there, it just kind of popped up. So, and then I called her and she answered the phone. And it turns out she's done all kind of cool workshops with this letter. And I'm just so excited. And, we get to, one of the neat things that I've gotten to do is to look, is to get to meet and look into the face through this Zoom thing of tons of people that I just really admire. And so tonight is a privilege to get to hear and see Mildred. And Mildred, take it away.
Thank you very much. My name is Mildred and I'm an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. I'm here in Toronto. And what time, Sam, am I supposed to stop?
Usually people keep it around an hour. But 45 minutes to an hour, however long you want to go.
Okay. I have a lot of things to say about this subject because it's a subject very dear to my heart. It's not only dear to my heart, it's responsible for my life because, so you told me this is not a regular AA meeting, so I'm allowed to talk about some other things, which are very important to me. And I think they were right in line with what Bill Wilson said, right in the 5th paragraph, where he talks about the unconscious, which is such a trouble. I didn't know that. And at 21 years, I would have died because I didn't know how to handle life. And I didn't know about the unconscious. I'll tell you, I don't know if you know who Father Thomas Keating is. He certainly has been a powerful influence in the meditation called Centering Prayer and with some of our people. And he has written a book on the steps, as a matter of fact. He's no longer with us, but he's a deeply spiritual person, was. And he said that he felt that understanding the unconscious was the greatest contribution to spiritual work that mankind has had. Now, that's a powerful statement. We've had lots of great contributions, and he says, and in my life, I have to tell you, I wouldn't be alive if I hadn't found out about what I'm going to tell you. So I'm starting a little different than I normally would. I just turned 90 years old. I'm a good-looking 90, wouldn't you say? And I'm going to be 50 years sober in May. And I have to tell you that my need to keep growing today is greater than it was when I came in, because this doesn't end. Our step 3 in the big book says it. It says we have to be rid of the false self, or it kills us. I never hear people talk about that. It says it kills us. God makes that possible. And I think that what I hear from my false self is the stuff that's stored in the unconscious. I know that now, and I know what to do about it. But for years, I didn't know. I roamed the world trying to manipulate people and control people and get them to make me feel okay, because I didn't understand. So I have to tell you, I think that this article that Bill Wilson wrote, the longer I'm sober, the more I believe that it's one of the reasons he came to the planet. Because if you really understand what he's saying, it is the solution for a lot of things if you practice it. Like he says, we're no longer adolescents. What might be cute at 17 isn't cute at 67, and it sure isn't cute at 87. And so, he talks about the need for humility. And I think that there's a lot of stuff written that isn't the truth about humility. I like what Bernard of Clairvaux said about 1600 years ago. He said, humility is the truth. And what I believe today to be the truth is that I'm a God being, that power lives in me. Page 55 says so. It says deep within every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It is only there he may be found, and every man, woman, and child includes you. It includes everyone on the planet, whether I like them or not, and whether they're living a good life or not. Sometimes when I say this, people say, how can you say that you love the murderer? Easy. I don't love what the murderer does, but I recognize what is in the book. It says in each of us is that divine being. He calls it the fundamental idea of God. But if you have no understanding of that, if you don't know about the unconscious, for example, there was so much I didn't know. I personally think that we should take some of the nonsense that we teach in high school and even college and teach people what's going on inside, because I believe that what goes on here is what is responsible for a lot of the murders, and a lot of the violence and the racism and the hatred, the judgment, and all that crazy stuff. I used to have that. Mind you, I never murdered anybody, but I sure did a lot of very immoral and illegal stuff. And anyway, Bill says we've got the cart before the horse. We're on this emotional merry-go-round. I think I just didn't know what was happening when I got sober. But one thing I knew, I didn't know how to live sober, but I didn't know how to do my life. And so when I got sober, I got a sponsor. I should tell you just a little bit about early childhood, because I'm glad that you say it at this meeting. I wouldn't do this at a AA meeting. I know what Dr. Bob said, we should leave the psychological stuff aside. It can't cure me, but I think we have to understand how we function. If you get a car and you don't know what the gadgets mean, and you press buttons that aren't supposed to be pressed, you can be in big trouble. And I was in big trouble in life. I was born to a family of 10, and I was the baby. And I was a lot younger than everybody else. And I didn't fit in that family. I'll tell you why. Because my father had become very wealthy. He was a farmer, and we owned thousands and thousands of acres of land. It was big business. And so I'm this last end, I'm the youngest. And then I've got 9 brothers and sisters, and they had a very different life from what I did. I don't fit. I have nothing to contribute to this family. What I am, they all said, I'm so smart, I'm brilliant. But what does that mean when you need to drive a tractor and you need to plant the land and all that? I had nothing to contribute. I understand it now. I felt alone. I felt different. I never could understand why I didn't appreciate the gifts God had given me. Like it was always, huh? And I know now I didn't fit there. And it wasn't, don't get wrong, I did not have a bad childhood. They pampered me and they babied me. But, when you have to keep growing spiritually, you have to deal with the stuff, the old ideas that you have, those things that are stuck. And a lot of people haven't understood that. When I got sober, and after I had done the steps and I was starting to change, and I didn't feel okay. And people would say, well, go to more meetings. I'll tell you, if you've got garbage in the basement, you need to go to the basement and get the garbage out. And if you don't, you have to live with it. I didn't know that. I didn't know that these old ideas. See, one of the girls in the family, one of my older sisters, they said she was retarded. And she used to cry. And I was 3 and she was 16. And she cried. In those days, they didn't know how to handle somebody who couldn't learn as fast as the others. They kept her in grade 3 till she was 16, and she cried, and I cried with her. And I wanted the world to change. So I did what I knew how. My brothers and sisters were good to me. If I asked for milk, they gave me milk. And when I asked them to fix my sister Dora, I was 3, 4. I thought they would. I didn't know what this was all about. And then I grew afraid, like these people that love me, they're not helping me. And I went to God because we were raised Roman Catholic. And I thought, that'll fix it. God will fix it because God made the sky and all the beautiful sunsets and so on. And God didn't fix it, not on my time. God fixes everything, but not on my time. And I had to do some change. I had things to learn. So at 5, I took a drink. I'm an alcoholic from the first drink. Everything changed when I took a drink. Dr. Silkworth says it perfectly. He says, we are restless, irritable, and discontent. And I could have said disappointed and angry and all kinds of things. Until we take that, we get the sense of ease and comfort. What brilliance is that? He didn't say we get ease and comfort. He says we get the sense of it. And the sense of anything is not the real thing. And so you drink, and then the sense wears off, and then you've got to drink some more. And I was off to the races. I learned to lie, cheat, and steal. And I'm not going to go into a big drunkalogue, except to say I couldn't be sober anymore. I had 2 lives. I loved being drunk, drinking, and I hated being sober. And that's how I lived. And I had to lie and cheat and steal and do whatever to keep the booze. I graduated from high school at 14, couldn't get into university. And so I hung around, drank with a bunch of boys. And at 17, I decided to go to a convent. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but I'll tell you this. Going to a convent when you're an alcoholic is really stupid. But it wasn't stupid to me because somewhere in my head, I still thought about that God who made the sunsets and who made those beautiful fields of wheat and all the things I thought were so beautiful and loved. And God will fix it if I go to the convent. I didn't want to go to the convent, but that's what I went for. Drunk. And I stayed drunk for the 15 years I was there. That's why they called me the Flying Nun. And anyway, I left the convent. And though I was well educated, I didn't know the important thing. I thought it was as simple as changing clothes, because in those days we wore the long black clothes. We gave up our name. I was Sister Mary Eugenia. We took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And I really thought the day I took vows, I remember being all dressed in white and prostrating on the floor and giving my life to God, thinking, it's over now. I'm good. 3 days later, I was drunk. And anyway, I stayed in the convent 15 years. And I was fascinated by some of the things. You see, in the 50s, the late 50s, there were already theologians who were talking about spirituality in a different way, and it attracted me. Anyway, I left the convent and I found the bars, and I'm not getting into that except to say I started to live a life of degradation. And in 3 months, I was thrown in jail. I still remember the chief of police standing over me yelling, saying, "What's wrong with you? I've never seen an ex-nun in jail." And he said, "You better never be back here either." So that's the way that life went. It was a terror. It was like going from, even though I was drinking in the convent, there was some decency in my life. When I left the convent and went to the streets, there was no decency. That's when I met Dr. Hoffer, and Dr. Hoffer knew Bill Wilson. And he said, "This girl hasn't got all these mental illnesses." He said she should go to AA, and I went to AA. Didn't know beans. I went to AA because my dad had told me years ago that my brother had gotten sober. He said, "I don't know what this organization is, but he said it's wonderful." And he mentioned AA. So I went to AA thinking I'm going to get transformed. I had no idea. After 15 years in a convent, we used to do 6 hours of spiritual exercises every day, and I knew nothing. I'm not going to comment on that, except to say I didn't know how this thing worked. So I went to AA 5.5 years stoned, and that didn't work. And then I married my psychiatrist, and that's stupid too. And that didn't work. After 1.5 years, we split, and I wound up on a park bench. I don't know how to live. And I'm on a park bench for 2 months, living like a tramp. I don't look like a tramp. And sometimes people say, "I can't imagine you like that." Well, trust me, I was there. The police picked me up on May the 18th, 1973. They picked me up and took me to a psych ward. And the morning of May the 20th, I had a spiritual experience. See, I've come to believe that God deals with us where we are, not according to this, where God is. God deals with us where we are. And so that morning, I took a look at my life. My life hurt. You know, in one sense, I had it made, and in another sense, I had nothing. I did not appreciate who I was. I had no idea about the things Bill wrote in that article. I just thank you, God, for giving us Bill, and thank you for that article, because it says most of the things that I have needed to learn. And so my first 21, I had a spiritual experience, sudden, and the compulsion was taken. And in 49 years, I've never had it back. It was done. That's what I think. Grace deals with us the way we can accept it. And I knew I don't know how to live. And I was on my way to commit suicide. And at that point, grace took the compulsion. And then I was left. I was left with me. And I'm telling you, being left with me and the way I thought and the way I lived life was not a good thing. However, by a series of circumstances, I got into AA after 6 months. I lived on Skid Row for a year. I was hungry most of the time. That was another. See, I think when you look at how life unfolds, I can't talk about emotional sobriety without talking about this, because that period, that year on Skid Row was really necessary. Something had to happen to me in that period. And then I got a job, and I won't get into it except to say my first 21 years were this. They were lived on the outside. They were lived in the third dimension. Despite 15 years in a convent, I didn't understand the difference between the third dimension and the fourth dimension. You know what the big book says? The big book talks about we have been rocketed into the fourth dimension, of which we had not even dreamed. I had not even thought about the fourth. I didn't know what it was. See, I still have the Catholic stuff in my head, that there's a heaven we're going to go to, we're going to, change, and then we'll go to heaven. Came to AA, I got a sponsor, and two of the men in the group, I was broken. I'll tell you, the person that's talking to you today, I was broken. And the steps changed me. The steps change us. I didn't know how, I couldn't read at that time. I was so broken. They read the book to me and told me what to do. The steps are of the heart. When the heart changes, that lets God start the process of growth. And I started to make money. I started buying houses. I'm an educator and I was in college, but I started buying houses on the side and I made lots of money. And this girl who lived on a park bench like a tramp, I built my own house. Life was going good, you would think. And I thought, I didn't understand life. I thought if you could make get stuff and get money and be important and I thought that's going to do it. And I was dying inside. I made lots of money. I had lots of men in my life. I was a good member of AA. Now you may question that. I did the outside very well. Doing the outside very well isn't the answer to this. The book says there's no middle of the road solution. I didn't understand what that meant. I know now what it means. It's not about how I look and how I talk. It's about my relationship with God. And I'm not talking now about a church God, because after I left the convent, I left the church, and I won't get into that. I have nothing wrong. The church didn't work for me. I realized something. I didn't really believe all these doctrines. And so finally I left. I'm sober now 21 years. I've got the good life. If you thought the outside was good, you would have wanted my life. I had it all going, and I'm dying inside. I'm sitting at AA meetings and people are saying, oh, I feel so, I'm no longer alone. I used to think some really bad stuff. I knew a few swear words too, and I'd say them. I thought, why do you feel that way? I don't feel that way. And again, at 21 years, I was suicidal. I was seriously contemplating ending it, because this to me was the end of the road. I believed AA worked. Absolutely, it works for you. It doesn't work for me. Life doesn't work for me. Of course it didn't. I had an unconscious filled with anxiety and with old ideas. All right. The day came again. I just feel that God put a man in my life. He came to talk at the meeting, and he talked at a conference, and he talked about how he had this business, but he couldn't make it go. And he found out that some of the things he had learned in childhood were keeping him, and he talked about that, and I heard him. And after I talked with him, and he said, there's hope for you. And so I didn't know what to do. I didn't know. You know what Bill says in step 8 in the 12 and 12? I'd never seen that. What happened was, within 2 months, I believe this. If we want to change, God makes it possible. God puts the stuff in our lives that we need. I heard that man speak. Then somebody gave me a tape. Somebody gave me a phone number. Somebody said, you know, maybe you want to explore this. And what did I do? I explored. I thought, I'm going to try. I phoned that man and I came to the States and I worked with him. And this is what I learned. I learned that there's a subconscious. I didn't know that. And that in childhood, we learn stuff. And what I had learned, and we learn, and scientifically now, this isn't just somebody's snake oil. Scientifically, they know that the baby's brain waves are in the theta range, which means it's the hypnosis range. The baby has not got consciousness yet, and so it has to learn how to eat and walk, and so the mirror neurons allow him to learn, but we also learn ideas, and we learn to feel things, and we take in what we see and what we hear and what we've experienced. Now, you know what I told you, what I experienced. And the old ideas I had taken in were, nobody loves me. If they did, they'd fix Dora. It was simple. That was my child mind. I'm not important. Nobody really sees me and nobody really cares about me. Now, I don't know what you took in childhood, but they say from the 3rd trimester in the womb till age 7, that's where that stuff, and we don't know we've got it. We're just growing up and we live from that. For me, I spent my life trying to make somebody love me, make me feel good. That's what my whole life was about, because as a child and Dora crying, and I cried with her, I wanted to feel good. And I kind of felt, and I didn't understand this at the time, I just didn't feel close to that family, even though they were good people. And just think, going through life with this, nobody loves me. I'm not important. Nobody really sees me. What happens? I became a manipulator. I became a person trying to control. I didn't grow up the way God wants me to grow up. I grew up trying to please you so that you would like me. And if you liked me, then I'd feel okay. That's what I learned from that man. That's in my subconscious, and we don't know we have it. And it ran my life. You see, the problem with those old ideas are, I think, it's my interpretation. Those old ideas become the voice of the false self. And I believe that I'm here to grow in God consciousness. I don't believe I'm here to give talks. That's what I do. But I think that we're here to grow in God consciousness. And if you listen to my old voices, they're all like a slap in the face of God. Like, nobody loves me. Maybe you don't love me, or maybe you love me and I can't feel it, but God loves me. See how wrong this is? I'm not important. Every one of us is important. Every one of us is special and unique and loved by God and cared for. I didn't know that. You had to love me. And if you didn't love me, then you see how wrong I was. Nothing good ever happens to me. Really. I've got a healthy body. I can see, I can walk, I can talk, except for that year when I had nothing on Skid Row. I've always had enough food, a roof over my head. I've got a car to drive, etc. But listen to the old voice saying, nothing good ever happens to me. See, what I think really is the thing. That's what then happens. You get to that point of pain where you can't go on. I couldn't go on. That's what I was doing, learning about this. And once I saw, you see, and then what happens? People come. How do you get to know that you've got those old voices? You live life. And people, there's a rule that says resonance, people with the same energy. So people come along and they trigger that old stuff because we're supposed to get rid of it. That's what was happening all my life. People were triggering that stuff, not because they were bad, but that's the way the universe works. Energy of like waves influence each other. And then we become aware that these old ideas, if you've got old ideas like I did, you can pray all you like. I prayed I went to a convent, for heaven's sake, to get rid of it. I didn't know how this thing worked. So what I learned was, well, look at what step 3 says. I read step 3 almost every day because I don't think we ever get totally rid of that energy. If you read Mother Teresa's, I was telling somebody this today. Mother Teresa had old stuff. Nobody ever that I know of, even the great saints, they all carried some stuff with them to the grave. I just think that this power that we talk about, it's so big, so immense. My little mind can't get it all taken care of. And so I made up a worksheet and I do my work. And I also learned something else that I think is powerful. There's so much of this good stuff come up. They say that the master, when he was here, spoke Aramaic. And in that language, there's a word. It's not the Holy Spirit. It's called Rukadekucha. And what it means, it's a power that is within us that undoes our errors and teaches us the truth. And so if you listen to that, it's a power that is within us that undoes our errors and teaches us the truth. So I learned to pray to that power within and to ask that those old beliefs be taken out. I'm much better, but I have to tell you, I'm not totally free of those old ideas. Somebody can come along and, pass me by and not say the right thing to me. And before I know it, I've got the old voice again saying, nobody cares about you. See, the awful part of that is it keeps us from being who we are. I think it was Dr. Bob. I don't know if I have it here. He said, life is consciousness. According to what we've got going on, we're going to live our lives. And I think that's true. If I am into those old beliefs, I guarantee you don't want to be with me, because when those old beliefs come up, sadness comes up, anger comes up, maybe fear comes up, and I have to do the work to get rid of what's there when it comes up. That's what Bill says here in the 5th paragraph. Even then, in paragraph 4, he says, this is such a beautiful statement. It's so clear. how to translate a right mental conviction into a right emotional result. There it is. How to take this truth I know and make it into a right emotional result. That's what my life is about. And it's working well, but I'm not done, that's for sure. And he says, it's the problem of life itself for all of us who have to go to the point of real willingness to hew to right principles in all our affairs. How do you do that? Is it all right for me to be on the road in traffic swearing at other people? Is it all right for me to hate? Is it all right for me to judge? I don't think so. That's what this deal is about, so that we live from that life force that is within. Page 55 has absolutely changed my life because it says there deep within, every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. I think about how I lived my life. If you didn't do what I wanted or what I thought you should, how you should treat me, I hated you. I judged you. I liked nobody when I came here. This program is absolutely transformative, and if I didn't understand, I do now. The pain I experienced was absolutely fantastic. It was absolutely fantastic because it drove me and drove me and drove me to find out what it is that I need to do and to keep doing it. Then he says, see, in step 8, Bill understood this. This is what I love about Bill Wilson. He said, let's be friends with our friends. What did he do? He, because of Roland Hazard, who had associated with Jung, he studied some of their stuff. And he found out about the unconscious. He didn't call it that, but in step 8, in the 12 and 12, he talks about, excuse me. He says, you might not have much restitution to do, but get to know yourself, dig deep. And it's right there. He says, we've got stuff buried below the level of consciousness. At the time of these occurrences, they have given our emotions violent twists that have since discolored our personalities and altered our lives for the worse. See, if you believe that, you're not the bad person. If you come into my life and you trigger my stuff, it's still my stuff. It's not yours. If you just have the right energy, and you know this, not everybody makes you mad. Not everybody makes you feel depressed and despondent, but some people, the right person can walk past me and just being in their presence, and now I teach. I haven't for a while, but I teach courses on this, and I see it in people's lives where they don't understand why things are going the way they are in their life. And it's always those old beliefs that they carry that have been triggered. So in step 8, you can find that it's buried below the level of consciousness. You see, Bill, when he got to know this, he tried to use the 12 steps on it, he says, to release his depression. That's what he's calling it here. Or why can't the prayer of St. Francis do it? See, I use a metaphor. I think that if I've got boxes in the basement and they've got garbage in them that's rotting, My job is to take those boxes out. It's not good enough to, put some perfume in or whatever. See? That becomes the work. Now, I've done the work now since 21, so I've done it for 29 years. And the thing is, we still, I think, are here to grow. That's what I believe, in God consciousness. And the old stuff, it becomes kind of who we are. Like, I'll tell you a few little stories about the difficulty of living. Isn't that the truth, though? I mean, if you think back to when you got sober, think how difficult it was, because you're a drinker, you're an alcoholic, and you think of yourself as somebody who can't stop drinking, and it becomes your personality. And there's something in my consciousness. Can we keep the chat clear? I'm distracted. There's something in the way we develop. Like, I developed into a person who saw myself as somebody who couldn't live without alcohol. Then we got past that. Now you get rid of some of these old ideas. That doesn't mean you become a loving person. That's constant. That's the work constantly. Like he says, he was trying to consolidate by offering love to others, regardless of the return to me. So I'll tell you what the last 10 years have been like. They've been wonderful, but they've been difficult, because as I've grown, I realized that I was a difficult person because I had put up walls, and I had a way of looking at people. It wasn't about what can I give you? It was what can you do for me to make me feel good? And about, I've always gotten, though, however, in life, I've always gotten not what I thought I should have, but God has always provided me. One day, I got a call from one of the Jesuits, and he said, I want you to give a retreat. And I said, I can't do that. I've been excommunicated. And he said, it's not that kind of retreat. He said, I want you to give a retreat for people in AA. And that was a change for me. And through that process, the walls came down. It's a big difference when the way I used to live, I had walls up. And how do you take those down? Well, it's been provided for me. The walls one day they just dropped down, and I saw, you've got to be real with people. You can't pretend to be something that you're not, because you can't grow in the spiritual life if you pretend to be something. People used to say to me, Mildred, they'd say, you scare me. I thought it was a compliment. I thought it was because they thought I was so educated or something. That's not what it was. They couldn't get to me. I didn't let you see. You know more about me now, because I'm telling you, this is exactly the way it is. The last piece I'm going to talk about is this. And I'm really excited about this. We learn, if you do any spiritual work, you learn that God is love and that we're made out of love. And one day I was with a bunch of people and they were talking about something, and two of the people started to cry. And I said, "Why are you crying?" Kind of stupid. And they said, "We're crying because we feel sad." And that was the moment I realized something. I don't let myself feel. I think sad, but I don't feel sad. And when that's the case, you're not real. And I understand now why relationships for me were so difficult. And how do you become a loving person? That's been my object. And my spiritual director and my sponsor, I had the same sponsor, by the way, for 44 years. And, near the end, he said to me, he said, "The way you become kind, you do kind acts. And if you do kind acts," and he said, we had talked about page 55, whether you like the outside of a person or you don't, you know that God is there. And, I love that piece from the New Testament where people said, talked about having given food. No, I believe the master told the story where people would go to the judgment and God would say, you did a good job. And they would say, "Well, we didn't feed you and we didn't give you room," and all that kind of stuff. And the master said, and God would say, "But if you do it to the least of these, my brethren, you do it to me." And so that's what I'm trying to do now. I don't go to church. I'm not religious, but I really try to do that, to be kind and to think kind. And, it's amazing how it changes how you see the world. I'll tell you, Bill talks in one, I think it's step 10, where he says, "We come here and we love nobody." That's me. I love nobody because nobody did it right. Nobody was giving me what I needed. Now I know that's not what you're here for. I'm here to serve you if I can, and to accept your love if you choose to be kind to me. And life is very different today. I love this article because that to me is what emotional sobriety has been for me. That's what spiritual growth has been. See, he says in the 11th paragraph, "I could not avail myself of God's love until I was able to offer it back to him by loving others as he would have me." People sometimes think, "Well, how can you love this person that?" I may not love the outside. I may not like what they do. Nobody says I have to, but it says I have to love you. And I'll close with that thing. Well, Gandhi always used the expression namaste. And one time the story goes that Einstein wrote him and said, "What does that mean?" And Gandhi wrote to him and said, "It means the God in me salutes the God in you." And I think that's really what it comes down to. I love this last sentence here. It's the 15th bit where he says, "If we examine every disturbance we have, we will find the root of it in some unhealthy dependency and its consequent demand. I call it those old beliefs that I carry." And then he says, "Let us, with God's help," and I would say, I ask Rukkadekucha, "continually surrender these hobbling demands." You know what hobble means? To tie together the legs to prevent or impede walking. And those old ideas, they hobbled me. But I feel at least now, I'm not saying I always do it right. That's not what I'm saying. Because this is just a growth process, but I know what to do now. So I hope that's been my life in the spiritual. Life has gone well on the outside, but that isn't really what the deal's about. Carl, I'll tell you one more thing. I think because it's good. One of the great authors, he put it this way. He said, the first half of our life, we build the container. That's our ego. That's we make money, we get degrees, we make success, we have a good bank account and nice house and this and that and the other thing. And then he says, at some point we realize that's not what the deal's about. It can't make you happy. It can't give you peace of mind. And then he says we have to make the next container, empty out the one we made, and then the deeper spirituality. It's just a period of growth and all that. So I love this. An outgoing love of God's creation and his people. Thank you so much for the privilege of being with you and speaking to you about this.
Thank you so much, Mildred. That was incredible. I believe the book you were talking about, the author, was that Richard Rohr's Falling Upward that you just were speaking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great book. So I was listening to one of your workshops, and you talked about where you heard, I believe it was Eckhart Tolle or somebody was giving a lecture on relationship versus relationships. So relationships singular versus relationships. And I wondered if you could speak to that for a moment.
Yeah, I don't know if I said it, because it seemed to me that as I started to do the work, everything is about relationship. I'm related to the sky, I'm related to the air, I'm related to the oxygen, I'm related to people, I'm related to everything. And it's how I, in that relationship to everything, how I see that, how I then respond to that. So, because I think I used to think that everything was relationships, and then for a lot of people, that's all about the romance and that kind of thing. That's important, but that's not really what this love business is. This love business is who we actually are. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then I had one more question. Tom asked or requested, Tom couldn't be here tonight. He had something he had to do, Tom Mule, but he asked that I ask you about Mac Cheater and your experience with Mac and what, just kind of what your experience was with him.
Fabulous. I came in broken, and like Mac was what I strive to. He is a loving person. Always, took time with me because I came in the West and he was in the West, and I don't have much to say about him. I have more to say about Tom Ivester, because it was Tom who said to me, because he knew that I had no relationship with God. That's why I didn't pray the first 21 years, because you go to a convent, people have false ideas. You can sit in a convent and not grow spirit. You can sit in AA and not grow spiritually. This is big stuff. And Tom took me aside and he said, I was about 3 years sober and I didn't get it at first. And he said, I have found the power of good. He didn't call it God. He said, I've found the power of good. And you know what? So have I. That power has been with me and looked after me and carried me through everything. It's absolutely amazing. And Sandy Beach was the other one who it's too bad some of you never met these wonderful people. Sandy said to me one time, and you know, it's really about this unconscious, but he didn't call it that. He said, we come in a 2-in-1 package. He said, we come in a body and we come in the soul. But he said, the way we're taught, he said, we put all our effort into the body. Bingo! That's how I lived those first years till I found out about how the unconscious worked. And then there was Chuck Chamberlain. You know, I think I was the horrible example of how not to do AA. So they all tried to help me change. And, you know, I just couldn't see it. Chuck used to sit with me by the hour and he'd say, you think you're separate and that's your problem. And I said, no, Chuck, no, you think you're separate. And when you understand we're all part of the one, when we're all part of God, we'll be okay. You know, when you ask about Mac Cheater, you know, all I remember about Mac was the kindness, the absolute kindness with which he always treated me. It was so good. And, you know, I'll tell you something else about Mac. Mac worked in the television industry and the radio. And when he died, he asked that none of, like, you know, sometimes people have this big bio, and then he did this, and then he was president of that, and then he did this. None of that. He asked that none of that, because he said that's not what this is about. He asked that none of that go into his obituary. And his obituary was about that long, just where he had been born and where he had lived, and, you know, mentioned that he had been a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, that he mentioned, but none of this, he was this announcer and he did that. You know, sometimes some of those things, I remember looking at his obituary and I thought, this man is real. No big hoo-ha.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about like the pathway from the Golden Slippers in Canada. I don't think a lot of people have heard of it. Some people hadn't heard of the Golden Slippers, but then it goes down to the Denver Young People Group and Mac Cheater's influence on Don Pritz and all these different people that had this kind of explosive impact on AA.
Well, they wouldn't have called it explosive. They would have just felt they were living the way they should. They were living the program the way they should. They were not big mouths, I can tell you that.
What was Chuck like?
Person.
Yeah, on a one-on-one, I've heard some really cool stories about him. Never known anybody who's met him before. Or yes, I have. I think Bob's met him before, but I've never known anybody who spent a lot of time with him.
I don't know what to tell. He was just a person. And, you know, remember, I'm sitting in AA, make your own conclusions. I don't know how to answer that. He just was kind. He taught me some things. You know, as a person, he was present. He didn't put up with crap, I can tell you that. I don't know what else to say, except at a conference, for example, if I was there, I mean, everybody knew I was drugging, but like he would take half an hour to sit with me and talk to me. That's the kind of person he was. If it didn't matter who you were, if you wanted to talk to him, always, I love this story because he had a good sense of humor. One of my friends, I know him now, and he tells the story when Chuck was alive. He went to see him one day, and um, he left, and he had forgotten something he wanted to ask, so he phoned him about half an hour after he got home, and said, Chuck, this is Michael. I'm so and so and so and so. And Chuck said, well, for God's sake, you were just here. Of course I know who you are. I always liked that story because he was just real. That's all.
I heard a story. I think it was you who was doing a conference with another lady whose sponsor was good friends with Chuck, and she was dying. And Chuck flew from California. They were at the hospital, and Chuck flew from California and came in, and they had a few moments in the room. And then she overheard him saying, you know, I can take your pain away if you'll give it to me, or something crazy like that. And I've heard some really amazing stories about him. So
that doesn't sound like Chuck to me. Maybe it was. That's not came from me.
Yeah.
He was very down to earth.
Yeah. So the way we usually do this is we'll have the person who speaks just pick a couple of people. I'm sure you know some people on the screen, and then we'll open it up. I can call them if you don't do, Mildred.
Huh?
I can call them if you want me to. Typically, the way we do this meeting is we'll allow the person who shares to call on a couple people that they know or they might like to hear from, and then we'll open it up.
Oh, why don't you do that?
Okay. Juanita, would you like to share?
Hi, thank you, Mildred. That was wonderful. Juanita, member of Al-Anon. I don't even know what to say. I was listening to your talk, and Sam mentioned it today. I was listening to your talk, and it was your talk that you gave many years ago, and it was about relationship. And you mentioned the very thing that you mentioned tonight was relationship versus relationships. And, you know, with 36 years in the program, it's something that, and I feel like crying as I talk about this, but it's something that is really beginning to sink in. You know, how interconnected we all are to everyone. And it ties in with what you were talking about, being separate. And I've never thought of myself as being separate. And boy, the person who cannot see is the one who can't, I mean, boy, you can't see, you just can't see it, you know? And little by slow, I'm watching those walls that I've built around me to defend me and to protect me come down. And thank God they're slow, because I can't imagine if they came down all at once, it would be like a tsunami hitting me, I guess. But it's just been interesting to watch my growth. And you really reminded me of where in Bill's story, he talks about, or it's talked about, not Bill's story, I'm sorry, Jim the car salesman. He failed to enlarge his spiritual life. And we really cannot, I cannot fail to enlarge my spiritual life. I have to do this. It's the practice of enlarging my spiritual life. And this practice is not easy. It's not easy. It's hard work. And it brings a whole new meaning to me of what I used to hear when I first came in about this is a program of action. And you started your talk, and what you said, and I'm going to probably paraphrase, but you said, I needed this program more in the last 10 years than I've ever needed it before. And my experience is that the longer I'm in, the more I need this, the more I need this. And there's that part of me that is absolutely starving for this, absolutely starving for it. And yet, somewhere deep within me, I want to half measure it. And I do that for a while. I live a life of complacency for a while. Then all of a sudden, I can't stand me and I can't stand who I am, how I'm showing up, how I am not in relationship with all of God's creation. And it moves me to develop my spiritual practice. It moves me to read more books that open up this mind to a deeper understanding, or maybe not even understanding, but to a deeper willingness to allow the presence into me. It is just such a treat to listen to you, and I respect you so much. And thank you so much for who you are and all you've done. God bless you.
I think this.
Just comment on one thing. You said that you're not. You made some comment that you're not united or related. We're always united. Like people say, God isn't here. God's always here. God is always present. I'm not awake to it. You know, if I take a butcher knife and put it into somebody, I'm not present, you know, probably to what God wants of me. And but that's business. It's business of waking up. I want to say one more thing, then that is that a lot of the truth is coming out through scientists these days. It's fabulous to me. I've got books and I've taken notes on things about I'm sorry, I got distracted by some of the things the scientists have said. And what they're saying is we're one, that they've discovered that our bodies, these bodies, they don't mean much. They're not going to last. If you think they are, go sit in a cemetery or go to the funeral and you'll see they're not going to last. It's not what the deal's about. But that we're all made, even these bodies, the same as this pen is made, we're made out of atoms and molecules. We're all one. And what a difference that makes. How could we be racist and full of hatred and judgment and so on? You know, we're all just doing our best. Let's love each other.
A guy, a friend of ours and a member of our group that comes fairly regularly and has moderated this, his name is JP, and he said a couple things. You know, he said that prayer that he used to be given by Big Frank or Frank McKibben, that was, God help me to face what I need to face today with an undefended heart. And he also said something really interesting in one of his talks with us, where he was talking about how I can't give love, I have to be love. He said, I can only be love. I'm not giving love. I can only be love. Like his whole relationship to everything changes as out. And I thought that was a really neat comment. What about Jim? You want to share, Jim?
Well, thank you, Mildred. That was just a magical talk. And it's beautiful when you hear the truth and you have the knowing, intuitive, recognition with it. And I love how you spoke about, energy and, how these triggers, it's never about them. And that is the gift that I think I'm maturing to, at either 50 years old or 20 years sober, is that this is for me. And, there's no, I can't condemn someone and be free. I can't judge and feel this love and this oneness, and the longer that I'm sober, I think the more sensitive I am to this truth. And, I think once I've realized that this valuelessness of, some of this, I loved how you spoke about everything that we put into our pot the first 50 years or cauldron or whatnot, and then we're trying to empty it out, the next 50 years is so true, because the opportunity, gosh, there's so much here, I started losing my place with that, that the geez. Wow, I can't believe I'm Jim the used car salesman in the big book, so I'm never short on words, so that's pretty good. But I think that the replacement of those things in the attachment of this materialistic world that I built around me, that when I come to the truth within myself, that those things really are valueless when I am of love, and everything, like Sam said, is the being of love, and we're all connected. That when I go back to trying to, either my ego finally heard this truth in my subconscious, that when I try to go back and manage the old way, I'm kind of caught in this vortex in between. And so it's beautiful because it keeps me working that much harder on this spiritual life, because it's all there really is now, and so thank you. That was just so beautiful. And I listened to your talk that Sam spread around, and law of attraction. I think everything shows up for us when we're ready. The teacher appears, or the book, and you're just a sage for my soul. So that was just a beautiful experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Mildred, we got about 10 minutes left, and then I'm going to open it up after this question. But I think one of the most important things about this workshop is you spoke about how profound it was to start examining those old belief systems and those old beliefs. Is there a format or a way that you do that? I know that, like, Bob Olson talked about running it through, 4 columns. He'll write the belief, where, why is resentful of that belief, what it hurts, threatens, affects, and then what are my mistakes? Where have I been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened, and use that belief? How did you address those beliefs, and how do you do that? What have you found the best way to examine those?
When I'm upset, when something hurts, when things are out of order, or I hear myself judging, or I neglect somebody, or whatever. I know that there's an old belief, and I developed a worksheet, and this class I do, sometimes we talk about this, and there's Eddie, who's on tonight, and Lisa. Where are you? There we've done some of the worksheet. I keep it simple. When I hurt, when I'm angry, when I'm saying bad words about people and judging and all that, I'm wrong. What's going on? And that's when I get to it.
So you'll write out the
I
actual
just,
stuff?
hi, everybody. I just want to say something because I know we're getting to the end, but Mildred's my sponsor and she does a spiritual call on Friday nights at 7. And it's amazing. And the worksheet she's alluding to, we talk about that sometimes and we go through that, and it's her worksheets that she's done. Like an example would be like, I would say something would trigger me and I'll say something like, I'm not worthy. And I'll sit there for the day in that. And then when I go to the worksheet, it tells me what God would say, what living in the spiritual principles would how that's changed. That's not true. That particular way would mean God loves me. He loves everybody. Page 55, that kind of thing. But it's not necessarily for but it is a spiritual talk. It's fantastic. And I put my email in the chat. If anybody wants to get on our call, we'd love to have you. Thank you. Love you. Your talk was amazing, Mildred. I'll talk later.
Lisa, hey, Lisa, is there any way, there are probably some people who I don't know if you guys would care to share that, but is there any way that we could get a worksheet, or people could get access to the worksheet, or to learn more about any of this?
I think it needs to be learned in the context of Mildred's talk, to be honest, because it's not just something randomly that you get. Like we've worked and for a bit, and that's for a long time actually. And then the worksheet comes up in our work, so it might not mean much to anybody if it's not in the context of the class. But that's totally up to Mildred. I'll let her answer that.
Well, I think I'm not again. I don't own this stuff, and I don't charge for it. If anybody, if you have 5-10 people that want to do a little workshop, you put it together. And then what I did that with a group in last summer. I had given a retreat, and then they wanted to, about 10 of them wanted to do further work. And so I sent one of them the stuff. That person photocopied it, gave it to the people that were going to work it, and then we had a Zoom call, and I taught the class to them.
That's awesome. So at the end of this meeting, if anybody would like to do that, maybe put that in the chat. And then Bob McConnell, is Bob on?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. And thanks, Mildred. A couple things, if I could use your help with. You talked about, I was really interested in your comment going back to a term, and I couldn't find it, la couture, perhaps, talking about that power within. You referred to that. Could you spell that, Mildred? Do you know the spelling of it at all?
Are you talking about Rukadakucha?
That's why I didn't spell it right. Thank you.
It's spelled Rookha. It's an Aramaic term. We have forgotten. And a lot of what Jesus, as I said, I don't go to church, but I do believe the master. Rukha da is D-A. Kucha is Koodsha. And it means there's a power within us. See, I think that the power, God has given us everything we need so that we can fulfill what we're here for. I don't know if I said this, but I'm just so grateful to know what I know, or have been given the opportunity. I used to hurt always, just feel like a piece of crap. And I don't. And, if I can help somebody else to feel better, man, that's a payoff.
I had just two other things. One, the idea of the benevolence of the power, how when I've got a lesson to learn, the lesson is in front of me, how I'm feeling or I'm upset or whatever else. And one of my teachers says, if I'm saying, why is this happening? Or why is it happening to me? Or why is it happening now? It's always the wrong question. The question is, what is it for? That is the benevolence of the world in front of me if I slow down enough. And the last thing I'd add, that I've listened to Mildred for many years, for a long time, and other friends like her who are kind enough to do workshops and other things at their graceful time. And all of them, to a person, what I found in them is they are always learning. They haven't just boxed it up now and just doling it out. They're always learning, continually learning, which goes to the most beautiful saying, is that when the teacher is ready, the student disappears. And what a greater place for me to be around people who are willing, leaning into the sharp edges of life than AA, especially with Jim, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And running around the country weekend after weekend, giving talks, looking like it's a fun thing to do. That's work. And the people doing it are offering it for free and for fun. So thanks again, Mildred. Thanks, everybody.
When stuff gets triggered in me, I do say, why is this happening? I'll tell you why. Because I've learned it's not your fault. If I didn't have crap within, there was nothing to get triggered. If I don't have, so when I meet Joe Blow and I feel upset, I say, why is this happening? What's going on in me that there was stuff to be triggered? The boxes in my basement don't stink unless something is rotting.
Beautiful. Thank you for being so generous with your time. I wish we could have gotten to everybody today. Mildred, I'll get back to you on the worksheet. You guys can, I'll get a group of guys together and we can do this worksheet if you're willing to at some point.
I'm absolutely willing.
Beautiful.
It's just finding the time to do it. That's all.
Yeah, well, we certainly appreciate you. Thank you so much. And the way that we usually close this meeting up is we go to our inner room. This means we can mute ourselves because it sounds like a schizophrenic acid trip when people pray off mute on this thing from the delay. So we go to our inner room and say the Lord's Prayer to ourselves, or whatever prayer you choose. Okay. Before anybody leaves, there's a flyer, the information. Juanita and Mary Thayer are doing a workshop New Year's Day, I believe, and the information is in the chat. So we got that up there, and I just needed to make that announcement. Thank you, guys. Thanks for letting me chair this month. Great to see you all. Thanks for letting me do this, and looking forward to Joel next month. Thank you.
Thanks.
Make note of the time zone on that.
Yeah,
talk.
it's New Year's Eve afternoon. It's New Year's Day in New Zealand. It is December 31st here.
Okay.
Thank you, Mildred.
I think I put all the time zones on it, Sammy.
Thanks again.
Thank you
Mildred.
so very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate you all.
Mildred.
My
That was
pleasure.
beautiful.
Thank you so much, Mildred.
Thank you,
Thank
Mildred.
you, Mildred.
That was awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That
Thanks,
was
Mildred.
beautiful.
Blessings.
Hey,
Thank
Lauren,
you.
look at
Thank you
this.
very much.
What a gift.
Jim's got a beard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mildred. God bless.
Blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jim fell for
Thank
the
you.
beard. Look, there he is.
Oh my goodness.
Love you, Jim.
Love you. I'm chasing you, Sammy.
Yeah. Good to see you.
Mildred, I was just reading a little Mother Teresa the other day, and she had said something about a priest that she was friends with who turned away from a leper, that the leper had really like freaked him out, and he turned his eyes away from him. And then he realized that he was turning his face away from the master, as you called Jesus.
Mhm.
And he decided to hug him and kiss him to get over that.
Mhm.
And she went on to say how if, when you turn your back on the lowly, like the poor, the diseased, that the master said, you turn your back on me.
That's right.
Right.
So that really, it reminded me of exactly what you said.
Yeah.
So
Very good.
What an honor, Mildred. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Juanita, I'll
Thank
be
you,
on for-
Mildred.
Bye, Eddie.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mildred.
Good to see you.
Thank you for your service, Sam.
Mildred, whoops, can you hear me? This is Joanna.
Yes.
It says Washington, but I'm actually a Canadian. So to me, it's very interesting that you're from Toronto, right?
Yes.
And okay, I have a question for you. Do you know of the work, he's dead now, of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin?
The what?
Pierre Teilhard de Chardin.
Say it again.
He wrote basically what you're talking about. And he's a Jesuit priest. He wrote in the 20th century, the first half of the 20th century, a book in English called The Phenomenon of Man.
Yeah.
Okay, I figured you might know it because this is your, more, I'm kind of more your age. Well, I'm not quite as old, but very close to it. And so, this has been an influential book. And this is basically, he says what you're saying. We're all connected. The stone and the table have maybe less consciousness than you and I, but they still have some level of consciousness. And
Thank you so much. It intrigues me that we can know this intellectually, but not live it from the heart. And I'm really intrigued to hear more about how to shovel the stuff out of the basement, because I understand that we're one and I could live all the spiritual principles I want. But if I don't clean out that basement, I'm never going to feel love or be loved. It's fascinating.
You're never going to clean out the basement.
There you go.
That's God's work, but you have to do the participation and wake up to it.
Woo!
We don't
Yes.
grow souls.
Thank you. Thank
This
you.
is about
This was
waking
the
up.
perfect talk for me tonight because of that.
Okay.
Abigail, I've got your email address. When we decide to do, or if you're I don't know whether you're gonna attend again or not, but I'm gonna coordinate with some people and try and get something
You've
put
got
together.
my phone number, don't you?
I do, yes, ma'am.
I don't. I attend almost every Thursday, and I just want to say thank you, because this is changing me for the better, and I appreciate it so much.
Me too. It's been fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being a part of it. All right, much love, guys. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
happy
Bye.
New Year to
Love you
everyone.
all.
Aloha.
See you next week.
Thanks again. Take care.
Good night, Don. Thanks. Here, you want to see the boys?
Good night, Corey. Love you. It's good to see you.
There you go. I know Mary already left, but I got you
Aw.
these.
They're so cute.
Yeah, they're adorable.
Aw.
They loved Mildred's talk too. Usually only one of them likes to listen, but they both came tonight.
I got all three.
Much
I got all
love. Y'all have a
three.
good night and Happy New Year. Dawn, I'll probably.
You're muted. What? We lost your volume.
Drat. Sorry. I was saying I'll probably be at that. Are you going to the thing with Juana and Mary?
I'm not for sure yet. I have a guy that's coming over starting tomorrow. He's just finishing detox, and so I'm figuring
you look. You probably need to sit down and have a nice talk with him.
Well, or not talk, keep him busy. I think I'm
Yeah,
gonna
do
put
something
him
other
on
than
the,
think about being detoxed.
Put him to work.
All right. Well,
right.
Happy
I got
New
some
Year
work
either way.
around my
Much
farm.
love.
he
Thank
needs to
you.
do. Love ya.
See ya.
Thank
Bye-bye. Bye, Twyla. Bye.
Oh, did we stop recording?
Oh.